countries, Dr. Atif?
20 countries there, Rita.
Yes. Dr. Peng Chu is here. Poonam from Mauritius is joining as well. So Dr. Peng Chu from Australia.
Rita?
Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Stephen.
How are you?
Very well.
Good.
So we will start very shortly. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your coming. I'm very grateful for the valuable contribution of those who spoke in the 47th ARTDO International Conference. Today, in the beginning of our post-conference workshops, we will have distinguished attendees, including Tanseries, datos, professors, deans, CEOs, coaches, as well as we have a reputable speaker, Mr. Casey Yan. Mr. Casey Yan is an executive board member of ARTDO International, as well as senior principal consultant of ARTDO World. Casey Yan is a man with wide experience of over 38 years of corporate work in area of strategic human resource management and over 25 years experience in global human resource leadership and management. He served 15 years in global supply chain management as head of human resource for Asia Pacific for the Swiss Reinsurance and Freescale Semiconductors and Motorola companies. He also served in Motorola as manufacturing operation manager. Ladies and gentlemen, as cultural agility is the practice of cultural intelligence in the real-life setting, our agile speaker, Mr. Casey Yan, was able to manage transcultural business team in many countries, including Japan, South Korea, People's Republic of China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Malaysia, Singapore, India, Australia, Thailand, Vietnam, Switzerland, Holland, Germany, France, United Kingdom, and United States of America. Agility is the ability of sustainably innovate, so our agile Casey Yan innovated and contributed in building the capacities of people in many countries and also in many different areas such as human resource management, operation development and operation effectiveness, talent management, talent development, organizational design, coaches and mentoring, transcultural team, and human capital management and change management. Education-wise, Mr. Casey Yan has a master in industrial management from University of East Asia, which is in Macau, an advanced diploma in management from the Malaysian Institute of Management, and also he was qualified in human resource executive in the University of Michigan. Ladies and gentlemen, ARTDO International and ARTDO World are glad to welcome our star of today, Mr. Casey Yan, who will speak about cultural agility in the age of globalization. But also this workshop will be enriched by another reputable distinguished leader, Ms. Latifa Daoud. Ms. Latifa is the Executive Director and Head of Strategic Human Capital Management of Kazana National Berhad. Mr. Casey Yan, could you please address the August people and the floor for you?
Thank you, Dr. Atif. So let me just get my file up. Thank you very much. I feel so honored that Dr. Atif as well as Ms. Rita Go have been able, to assemble such an august and such a distinguished group of very senior and very experienced people into today's 2-hour workshop. When Rita told me, to do this particular presentation in 2 hours, I was struggling with how am I going to manage the time, in terms of introducing the technical contents of what it means, to be culturally agile, but also have the opportunity to not only look at it from my perspective and my experience and Puan Latifa's experience, but tap into the rich experiences that obviously are resident in our participants today. So I will be trying to manage the time well and see whether we can strike a balance between my presentation and your participation. Okay, so please be patient. If I sometimes seems a little bit hurried in terms of wanting to move on in respect to the 2-hour timeline. So with that, we have to ask ourselves the question. This thing called CA, cultural agility, has a obviously context that we need to apply it and that is in the age of globalization. And, whether it is in the public sector or in the private sector, whether or not, okay, you are in NGOs, okay, you have got to be absolutely, you can't miss this momentum called globalization. And when we talk about globalization, okay, here are some of the manifestations in which cultural agility can either help or hinder, okay, our business processes. Like we're trying to do mergers and acquisitions, joint ventures, business alliances. We have to manage culturally diverse employees and talents, whether those employees and talents are within our organization or whether those employees and talents, okay, are in other people's organizations. We obviously have got to talk about our business ecosystem. Okay, our whole, chain, dealing all the way from suppliers to distributors to our clients and customers. Then obviously we have got to offer our products and services and solutions and the design and the delivery and the marketing, okay, for our innovative products and services has got to be culturally appropriate, okay, to be able for us, okay, to gain the mind share and the commitment from the people, from the customers to want to buy our products and services. So in that context, all right, I want to graphically represent, the space in which cultural agility plays in the corporate world. And in that sense, therefore, when you and I, okay, in our organizations, whether it's be, okay, in academia, whether it is in profit-making organizations, okay, in whatever organizations, that substantively nowadays, we have our vision and mission. And a lot, okay, of that vision and mission will have to be enabled by our ability to design, develop, acquire capabilities. And for me, capability is the capacity and the ability to innovate, to grow, to be sustainable. And so rapid growth, sustainability, and of course our need to explore opportunities in emerging markets. And I use the word emerging market here in terms of markets that we are not participating sufficiently enough. All right? And emerging markets here could be, for example, we in Malaysia, all right, okay, trying to get into Europe is an emerging market for your company. All right, so I want to put the context around my definition of emerging market. An emerging market by your own corporate footprint. So as a result of which, again, we have to look, okay, at the ability to leverage workforce globally. We have got to be able to access global markets and partnerships. And we got to be able to ensure that our products and process and marketing are culturally appropriate. So let's run a quick poll, just okay to see whether how intense, at least from the participants who are here today, in terms of looking at your future. So we're going to run a poll, okay, in terms of the next 5 years. We're going to see whether your global workforce, are you going to be requiring more or less? Whether your play in the global markets, whether you're going to be requiring more or less, and whether or not, okay, you're going to be designing and launching more products and services, okay, in the global arena. So I'm going to be running the poll on Slido. Okay, so please, if you could, use your mobile phone, and in your browser, you can either go to slido.com and key in the pin S100, or you can actually scan the QR code and that should launch you into the poll. So once you're ready, please proceed to give us your inputs. So the first question, the first poll is, do you see the next 5 years your organization's need for more global talents and workforce? Okay, the inputs are starting to come in. Okay, so we have 11 respondents so far. I hope, okay, that the inputs are a little bit too slow to come in because people are trying to get access to slido.com. Dr. Atif, how many people do we have now active online per Zoom?
We have 35 people.
Okay, so we are at 17. We have half of the participants giving us their views. So if we could have about 20 plus people, that would be nice. Okay, so we are still stuck at 17 respondents. I'm hoping to get it past 20 or more. You can rest assured that your responses are all anonymous, so you don't have to worry about confidentiality and your strategies. Okay, so in the interest of moving on, all right, there you are, ladies and gentlemen. All right, 53, more than half of you believe that in the coming 5 years you have a definitely need, okay, for more global talents, global skills. And okay, 35% substantially more and need more, close to 90% requirement. So I hope that for those of you that has fallen into this category of need more and substantially more, that at the end today you can begin to say that cultural agility is going to be a critical. Second poll, what about your products and services? Wow, look at that. Okay. Interesting results. Look at the poll. Do substantially more is close to 80%. And if you combine that with also do more, that's nearly 90%. Okay. And just a small group of you believe that you may not have a need for any additional advancement or expansion in offering more global products and services. So there you are, close to 90%. Close to 90%, you see growth in the need for talent. Close to 90% see a need for expanding your products and services to be more globally relevant. Okay, what about this one? The third poll, about your need to work with global markets, global customers, global partnerships, okay, all kinds of business configurations. All right, so you can see again the statistics in that this one is again sick more and substantially more is the high 80s, close to 90%. So an affirmation of my statement, yes, we need to be more global in our business. We need to be more global, okay, in offering products and solutions. We need to be more global in terms of working with our business ecosystem, okay? So as a result of which, it is very important for us to begin to understand what are the requirements, all right, okay, when we go global. So according to Mercer, okay, a very renowned human resource consulting company, and they defined the need for a global company and global leaders under 3 broad categories. Okay, the ability to understand its global, mindsets in terms of its global baseline. All right, and then okay, what additional skills do we need as they partake, as they involve bigger and bigger play in the global field? And then obviously the mindsets of the leaders. And you can see that cultural requirements are strongly indicated per Mercer's research. Now, sometimes when I offer a program, or when clients ask me for a program and says, Casey, can you help us? Can you help my company? Can you help my leaders to sharpen up their cultural agility? There is a tendency for people to think of just purely ethnic culture challenges, country-specific culture challenges. And for me, I would like to broaden our discussion in terms of cultural agility to 3 levels. Okay, and they work hand in hand. And that 3 gear points, if you will, has got to be well greased, well coordinated, well synchronized. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Corporate culture, all right, is one of the things that if you're working from, say for example, if you are doing a joint venture, you're doing a merger and acquisition, okay, company A, company B, even from within the same country, will have different corporate cultures. And when the 2 merge, then obviously you're going to have, again, culture clashes, or what I call culture flashpoints. And similarly, okay, cross-ethnic culture potential flashpoints, and then obviously personal values. All right. And so it will be incomplete for us to begin to really totally comprehend the challenge of cultural agility without addressing it at these 3 levels. So let's see, some of the potential issues that surface. Okay. So very quickly, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this. An ex-president of South Korea, who is now in jail, but nevertheless, that is besides the point. And then, of course, you have the very famous Bill Gates. Okay, looking at this picture, can you identify what is a cultural problem here? Put your comment in the chat room, open up your microphone, give me a quick reaction. What do you see? Is there a problem? Look like a very warm...
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
go ahead.
I think Bill Gates is putting his hand in his pocket, which I don't think culturally would be in tune. That is not very healthy. It is not giving a friendly sort of indication. That's my feeling.
Okay. All right. Thank you
Both
for
of them
that.
are smiling, which is good.
Yes. Let's hear from my my Korean participant friend, Director Yoon.
Yes.
What is this?
I think this is also part of international etiquette. Maybe up to their manner. Yeah, I think very freestyle. So very show some that can be natural, yeah. Just
Right.
yeah, from the perspectives of common people in Korea, it's not it's a little bit rude, not proper. But from the perspective of global people, maybe right, I think.
Right, so thank you for that. Okay, it created a significant issue with a vast majority of South Koreans way back then. Okay, and it was all over the internet, it was all over the news, okay, it was in the news in Korea, it was in the news, okay, internationally. That it was deemed that Bill Gates was being disrespectful. Right. So if you take it from the Western perspective, perhaps, okay, a North American, European perspective, and then all of a sudden you get this very offensive response or feeling offended response from the South Koreans, would you say that the South Koreans are perhaps a little bit too picky, a little bit too sensitive, a little bit too hierarchical, a little bit too formal?
Yeah, a little bit, not a little bit, highly formal and hierarchical, but
Right.
in this case, yeah, it's, as I said, not proper manner. Just Korean media can criticize Bill Gates, but just think of his status, global status, and then he might have met many global, different kinds, different countries' presidents, and higher than minister level officials. Then he also showed a similar attitude, maybe. That's why he shook hands like this, naturally, I think.
Right.
But
So
it's not acceptable in Korea. Yeah.
Yeah. So for him, he may actually trying, okay, to be a bit warm, a little bit, okay, informal, and trying, okay, to establish the relationships that he wants to do with South Korea on a government basis, okay, with the private sector, okay? And that is one his perspective. To be fair to him, subsequently, a lot of people went and researched, okay, how does he do the handshake around the world? Like you said, okay, he's meeting, okay, all the prime ministers and all the presidents around different countries. And yes, it is his personal style. It is in his personal habit. He does the same thing when he's greeting, okay, the prime minister of France. He's doing the same thing when he is in Germany. He's doing this, okay, when he's in India. Okay, so it is in his style. But the fact is, all right, nationally, the South Koreans took offense at it. Okay? So, and for a moment, it derailed the fact that, they are, he was there, okay, to be an advisor in terms of some of the technological future and technological strategies. And it derailed the conversation. People got distracted. All right, okay, so now, okay, obviously the question, okay, is Bill Gates arrogant? Okay, is he just simply, nerdy, or he couldn't care less, okay? Or is he culturally agile? So if he's culturally agile, you will realize that different countries' version of formality acceptance or informality acceptance varies. And he cannot just say, okay, my style, all right, okay, is comfortable to me, I am sincere, without acknowledging perhaps, okay, the sensitivities on the receiving side. Right, okay, so now let's take a look at this hand signal. Ladies and gentlemen, in many parts of the world, this hand signal is a very acceptable signal. In fact, a positive signal. Right? Unfortunately, in some countries, this is seen to be a rude, on the point, okay, of being offensive as in vulgar, okay, hand signals. And, okay, obviously this goes back, okay, to the late 50s, when at that time there was this character called Vice President Nixon. He arrived, okay, into, I think it was Argentina. And, okay, he was getting off the plane. He tripped on the red carpet. And so for a few seconds, okay, you know, everybody was reaching out to him to make sure that he didn't fall. And after he's fully recovered his posture, he indicated this as, I'm fine, I'm good, not to worry. But the press, okay, was saying, here you are, this arrogant vice president of the United States came in, and the first thing he touched down was he's showing this vulgar sign to all of us. Okay? Now, I do not know about you. When I started going global, okay, in terms of the work that I do, I had a lot, okay, of unfortunate instances. Luckily, there was nothing catastrophic, but yes, there were awkward moments. There were awkward moments to derail my business contract negotiations, my, ability to influence the audience, and so on and so forth. Nothing catastrophic, but it did create business flow issues. Right, so that is more, okay, around national cultures and what is appropriate, inappropriate. What about corporate culture? So we have this acknowledged world guru on corporate culture. His name is Fons Tropinares. And so we have a lot. The world now, this, okay, is very, very heavy, very intensive, okay, in terms of buying companies, divesting companies, doing alliances, joint ventures, and so on and so forth. Okay. A lot of inorganic growth is coming from all these new mergers and acquisitions. And now, so the case here is about, okay, this big company called Amazon in the United States decided that it was going to acquire, okay, a food company called Whole Foods. A few months after the acquisition, all right, you found that the executives of these two companies, all right, begin to have problems. Not only the executives, but at the working level, in the warehouse, okay, in the distribution chain, all right, the employees from both sides of the company begin to have a problem. And what was the problem? The problem was Amazon, okay, is a very structured, very formal, and they follow SOPs, they follow procedures, they are highly compliant, That's the nature of the Amazon corporate culture. Whole Foods, however, is a very empowered, okay, high trust, and they leave the different areas of the company to decide what to do, when to do, how to do. Okay, a highly empowered organization. There you are, ladies, gentlemen. All right, a very Eiffel Tower, a very centralized, very rigid, very formal corporate culture, deciding to buy a company that is extremely decentralized, empowering, and it created a lot of problems. So the integration of the company caused significant issues to the extent, okay, that it even surfaced up at the customer service point. So let's hear then from Dr. Fons Tropinares, okay, from a corporate culture to corporate culture flashpoint. What does that mean?
It's obvious that many mergers and acquisitions have failed. In fact, latest research has shown that more than 70% of the failed mergers and acquisitions are due to cultural misunderstandings. We believe that the focus on the objective business value is not good enough. A lot of due diligence is done on financial and market considerations. But what people tend to forget, perhaps because it's so complex, is that the misunderstandings between corporate culture and national culture are one of the main factors why mergers and acquisitions fail. What can we do about it to avoid it? We have a 4-step approach that we use with our clients to help them make integrations more successful. The first step is what we call cultural due diligence. It's all about helping both parties involved to recognize cultural differences. We use interviews for that, validated questionnaires, etc., etc. In this first stage of cultural due diligence, we not only show cultural differences, we also try to help people to frame what they see as their basic business dilemmas. Dilemmas are there only when people step. Respect starts by understanding that you buy a company and perhaps a different value than your own company. If we take a pharmaceutical firm that is fairly large with all the success based on economies of scale and standardization, and they buy a small firm for reasons of innovation, make people respect those differences. Then you can work on an integration that is not hammering out the innovation of the small company. It brings us to a third step. So we have, through cultural due diligence and respect, an understanding of cultural differences and cultural similarities, plus the basic business dilemmas, which we then reconcile in a process that we call reconciliation. This is the third step. We have very many methods, but the essence of our method is called the dilemma reconciliation process. In fact, we engage the different parties around the table to work on their dilemmas in constructive dialogue. This results in action points in how to reconcile the dilemmas originated by the merger and acquisition process. And we come to the fourth step, where we call implementation, or the rooting of those differences. There are many examples of this. You can integrate it into your appraisal system, your reward system. Some other companies, let's take PepsiCo, have integrated into look at what you share between the companies you buy, a very much focus on their core values. And finally, the integration in branding and communication processes like HSBC. I come to a summary. We believe that the essence of successful integration processes is taking culturally serious. And culture is a serious process because it makes the difference in success or not. If we take this following metaphor in the process, look at what you share, we call it the nail. It allows the pendulum to swing in diversity. And it is your role as a leader to connect the two, the quality of the rope. Good luck.
Right, okay, so I, in my previous role as the Asia Pacific head of HR for two large multinational companies, one a financial services company called Swiss Re, and another one for, Freescale Semiconductor, formerly Motorola Semiconductor. I was involved with quite a bit of merger and acquisitions in South Korea, in China, and in India, and with one in Australia. Unfortunately, all these organizations didn't get me involved when they were doing what I call the business due diligence. Okay, and after that, they decide, okay, let's go ahead, okay, and merge and do joint ventures and so on and so forth. And then after that, the integration part, it begins to get into lots of issues. Disgruntled employees, frustrated executives, the integration is taking much longer than I expected. The value of the integration, the value of the merger and acquisition was not delivering on its promise. Then they come and say, Casey, as the head of HR, can you go in now and help us, okay, to work on the soft side of the integration? Okay? It's not a spot I want to be, but that's the spot that was, my play. And so I have, to actually do a lot of OD work to do in particular step 2, 3, and 4. Right, okay, and so whether it is, your ability to be culturally agile in an ethnic group to ethnic interaction, or corporate to corporate interaction, or, executive to executive interaction. There is this model called the journey to cultural agility, which has basically 4 areas. All one is you got to be aware of yourself. What is your own cultural characteristic? Okay, and many of us, sometimes are aware of what our culture is, but really have not taken a deeper understanding of why that culture. We understand what of our culture, but why of the culture is we don't have substantive understanding. So let's understand the what of our culture and the why of our culture. So, and then to go on to be able to then put ourselves to understand the culture on the other side. Okay? That you want to explore, that you want to learn, that you want to be open. Second step. Then you are able to say, all right, given the similarities, given the differences, okay, how can we leverage for common benefit? Okay, and so that requires an open attitude to be able to synergize and to be able to see, according to Dr. Fons from Panas, and see where is the key dilemma, and let's then agree to move forward in a certain format, in a certain integrated format. So my model, okay, therefore you would have to work, okay, on key personal orientation, your own bias, cultural minimization is sometimes, okay, we are culturally arrogant. Okay? We say that my culture is the stronger culture, is the better culture, is the more effective culture, all right, versus your culture. Okay, sometimes we have our, cockiness, our arrogance. And then how open are we to adaptation? How open are we to integration? So understanding yourself. And then, okay, to be able to understand that before I want to go to the end point, all right, this is a begin with the end in mind. So if I understand myself, okay, and I want to be able to say that in the merged relationship, all right, I'm looking for this characteristics called cultural curiosity, tolerance for ambiguity, perspective taking, cultural humility, resilience, and relationship building. And once I do that, I need to be able to take a look at the characterization of the other side of the culture, whether it's corporate culture or, okay, ethnic culture. And then I can begin to build the bridging process. Right, okay, and so just a little bit of depth are in the interest of time. And so we take a look at the one, okay, which is the affecting behavior responses on our side. And I took, okay, a lot, okay, of ideas from Paula Caligiuri in her book, Cultural Agility. And she suggests to us, okay, that we look, okay, at cultural minimization, cultural adaptation, and cultural integration as the process by which for us to determine how far do we want to respect that culture and leave it alone, and how far do we want to impose our culture and ensure that the other side accept it. So let's take a quick look at cultural minimization. All right, okay, and so cultural minimization is your need to standardize, control differences, control variability, emphasize similarities, and then limit the effects of the differences. Where and when do we do cultural minimization? Right, okay, and then cultural adaptation. Yeah, we will drop our standards of culture and accept the standards of culture on the other side. Okay, so we will adjust ourselves to the norms. We will then adopt the opposite culture's characteristic. When do we do that? And the question becomes, okay, of integrate. Okay, no, all right, it's neither A or B. It's, we got to come somewhere of integrating. Okay, where we create new norms, and okay, that is both acceptable. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so when you look at your business alliance, okay, and it has got a lot of things to do with health and safety and quality assurance and coming up with a global brand, global image, and you want to tie in with the vision and mission, then it is important that we introduce, that we drive it using cultural minimization. If our acquisition of companies and technology is based, okay, because they have their own unique characteristics that we value, then we want to be able to, yes, let go of our cultural characteristic and let's embrace them. Okay, so in particular in the field of sales and marketing, in the field of government relations, in the field of local regulatory compliance, in terms of local level manufacturing capabilities, then the way to go is to reach out more doing cultural adaptation. And then for integration is where you have the ability to work with global teams and the engineers, the accountants, the project managers are all well balanced out. Then you may want to be able to do more of an integration piece. Okay, how can you leverage the strengths of each of the culture and come up with something that is acceptable for all the players? So in global teams, joint ventures, in negotiation teams, all right, and the post-M&A activities. Right, okay, and then we have this thing called psychological ease across culture. So how do we feel that we have to work with, we have to understand and work with the opposite culture? To what extent are you and me comfort, okay, in unclear situations? So we don't understand that culture. And when that culture has got some, practices, rituals that we don't understand, okay? And therefore it means that if I don't understand, it means that I don't control, and are you willing to let go of the control? And self-efficacy. Okay, are you willing to say, yeah, let me be humble, let me accept, okay, the fact that when I'm in Rome, let the Romans do what the Romans want to do. And I am perfectly okay to play the roles and the rules, okay, of the Roman way. Right, okay, so it requires a certain level of emotional intelligence. And of course, emotional intelligence, if you bring it into the cultural context, would then be CQ, cultural intelligence. Okay? And then your ability to want to continue to discover, explore, research, understand that diversity. And so we have got to be able to look, okay, at, therefore, inherent for us to, in order to be successful, is this basic thing, that we value diversity. We respect diversity. It's not me better than yours, yours better than mine. Let's see, okay, what is the best on both sides of the equation. And that in the interest of establishing firm, good business relationships. And in order to do that, all right, we do the perspective taking. It's not about your culture, my culture. It's that when we merge two cultures, do we get better, do we get more effective in terms of the business results? So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, all right, okay. We're now going to begin to talk about better understanding, okay? So we understand your own culture. You need to understand the other side's culture. And I now give you the work of, okay, Professor Geert Hofstede, okay, in terms of characterizing culture in 6 dimensions. Let's hear from
At the end of 1970s, psychologist Dr. Geert Hofstede published his Cultural Dimensions model. Since then, it's become an internationally recognized standard for understanding cultural differences. He identified 6 dimensions that could distinguish one culture from another. The first one is the Power Distance Index. It measures the extent to which the less powerful members accept and expect that power is distributed unequally. Malaysia has the highest score. Team members will not initiate any action. They like to be guided and directed to complete a task. Austria has the lowest score. Supervisors and employees are considered almost as equals. Individualism versus collectivism is the second dimension. It represents the degree to which individuals are integrated into groups. Guatemala, the country with the lowest IDV score, has a collectivist culture. People are integrated into strong groups which continue protecting them in exchange for unquestioning loyalty. On the other side, the United States have the highest score. The individualism is perfectly represented by the American dream, which is the hope for a better quality of life and a higher standard of living than their parents. The masculinity versus femininity dimension refers to the distribution of roles between the genders. The study revealed that women's values differ less among societies than men's values. Men's values can be very assertive and competitive, maximally different from women's value, or modest and caring, similar to women's values. Japan has the highest score. If you open an office in Japan, you should recognize you're operating in a hierarchical, deferential and traditionally patriarchal society. Long hours are the norm, and this, in turn, can make it harder for female team members to gain advancement due to family commitments. At the same time, Japan is a culture where all children learn the value of competition and winning as part of a team from a young age. Therefore, female team members are just as likely to display these notionally masculine traits as their male colleagues. By comparison, Sweden, the country with the lowest score, is a very feminine society. People focus on managing through discussion, consensus, compromise, and negotiation. The Uncertainty Avoidance Index describes how well people can cope with anxiety. Greece is the country with the highest score. During a meeting, you might be keen to generate discussion because you recognize that there is a cultural tendency for team members to make the safest, most conservative decisions, despite any emotional outbursts. At the other end of the spectrum, Singapore has the lowest score. The country is more open to change or innovation, more inclined to open-ended decision-making, and has less sense of urgency. Long-term versus short-term dimension refers to the degree to which people need to explain the inexplicable, and is strongly related to religiosity and nationalism. China, the country with the highest score, has a long-term orientation, which means that the culture is pragmatic, modest, and more thrifty. Sierra Leone is the country with the lowest score. People tend to be religious and nationalistic. Self-enhancement is also important here, along with a person's desire to please their parents. The last dimension is indulgence versus restraint. Countries with a high score such as Brazil allow or encourage relatively free gratification of people's own drives and emotions, such as enjoying life and having fun. In a society with a low score like Russia, there is more emphasis on suppressing gratification and more regulation of people's conduct and behavior, and there are stricter social norms. In conclusion, by using Hofstede's cultural dimensions as a starting point, you can make the unknown less intimidating, avoid making mistakes, and provide a much-needed confidence boost when you're working in an unfamiliar country. Above all, make cultural sensitivity a daily part of your life. Learn to value people's differences, and how to respect the things that make people who they are.
Okay, so I hope that you have a framework now that allows you to go forward, move forward, and better understanding, okay, in some of your cross-cultural relationships, why some things are a lot more easy, and why some things, okay, are getting stuck in the mud. All right, so this is a very nice framework, and it's displayed here. So for Malaysia, we are very, very high on power distance. We are relatively low on individualism. That means we are a very collective society. All right, we are kind of like in the middle, okay, without any very strong masculine nor feminine characteristics, okay, in our culture. And our comfort with ambiguity is low, okay, which means that we want a lot, okay, of, clarity. We need a lot, okay, of confirmation and affirmations. And we are relatively more oriented to quick action, quick results, spontaneity. And the Malaysians are then relatively a happy crowd, okay, a very happy crowd. So the reason why I asked you to do the pre-work is because I don't have enough time to actually go through into the richness of the details. Okay? But by your virtue of the fact that you have been able to do your characterization in the pre-work, in the report it will characterize each of these 6 dimensions. All right? And so it will give you the appreciation. All right, a small distant power would be a country like Austria, and Malaysia with almost 100 is the extreme. And so on and so forth. Okay, individualism, guess what? Okay, our friends in the US. And collectivism, okay, is usually in a more, okay, of the Latin American and Asian countries like Guatemala and, okay, our Asian fraternity. Masculinity, as already highlighted, is dominant in Japan, and in femininity is most, okay, of the Northern European Baltic countries. Short-term orientation, Nigeria, okay, and long-term orientation, Hong Kong. So all these is based, okay, on a research of thousands and thousands of people representing those, okay, ethnic countries. Indulgence, Australia, very high indulgence, okay, very happy people. All right, and restraint is very conservative, very reserved people are the China people. And then, of course, okay, uncertainty avoidance, our friends in Singapore, and strong, okay, is Japan. Okay, so just wanted to share that with you. So for your future needs, either yourself, when you're going forward, okay, to do any partnerships, alliances, okay, to understand, okay, the counterparty, or when you are sending your team, okay, do try and get this very simple, piece of framework out to them, and it will be very, very helpful for them to go in with a sensitivity, so that you can it's free, right? On the website, it's free. You can actually put in your country's country name. You select, okay, the counterparty, and there you are. Okay, it will flash up, all right, in the 6 dimensions where you are more or less the same, and where you are going to be encountering problems. The danger of Hofstede's characterization is that it will sometimes cause us to stereotype people. You got to be very careful, okay, that, this is based, okay, on norms of thousands of people. And what it basically is to look, okay, at the mean, okay, of one culture and the mean of the other culture. But we know that, okay, in any culture, there is a distribution of the behaviors, all right? And the biggest issues surface when you have the extreme of one culture. Okay, so let's take a look at the extreme of French culture, all right, and then you look at the extreme of the US culture. And that's when you see the tremendous gap. And that's when you see people begin to characterize each other in not so nice terms. Okay, so the Americans, we see the French, stereotype them as arrogant, flamboyant, hierarchical, emotional, uncooperative. Okay, and the French will see the Americans as naive, aggressive, unprincipled, workaholic, okay, not sincere. Now, so let me share with you a little bit, okay, of my personal work in the field of cross-cultural agility, and I coach individuals. So I just want to share with you, there was this Vietnamese HR lady in Vietnam, and she works, okay, in an Australian company, okay, that has a business presence in Vietnam. Her boss in Vietnam, obviously, the boss is an Australian lady. And both of them were not getting on well, hardly. And so they both needed, okay, to understand really what's the problem. They respected, okay, the expertise, they respected the experience, they respected, okay, the value of each other. But when they're actually working with each other, there was a lot, okay, of grinding and, unhappiness. So they brought me in, and so again, with the culture compass, I was able, okay, to see how Australian was the Australian boss, how Vietnamese was the Vietnamese, okay, manager, and you found that one of the problems is not because, okay, the Vietnamese was too Vietnamese. In fact, she was un-Vietnamese. She was uncharacteristically not Vietnamese. Her Australian boss has spent quite a number of years working in Vietnam, all right, and have understood, okay, a majority of the Vietnamese. Okay, in fact, the Vietnamese manager was even more Australian than some of the Australians. And so the image, okay, in the Australian boss, okay, is that I expect, okay, my Vietnamese manager to behave in a certain way. I know how to manage her, and she is really, really upsetting my understanding of what a good Vietnamese manager is all about. Okay, so with the data for us, okay, to understand, remember just now I talked about the characterization, okay, is that you have this Vietnamese manager who is not very Vietnamese in her outlook, in her behaviors. And then you have got, okay, this Australian manager that thinks, okay, every Vietnamese should be like that because 90% of the Vietnamese are like that. And then you have, okay, a style personality clash. Recently, I was also asked, okay, to help a company, an American company, a huge American company. And the CEO of this company decided that he wanted to come up with a new corporate culture. The new CEO felt, okay, that the company was underperforming because the old culture was dragging the financial performance was dragging the technology performance of this company. So he introduced, these new 6 sets of corporate culture values: fearless, inclusion, quality, customer obsession, truth, and transparency act as one. And you wanted to roll this out globally across to all the factories, all the R&D, all the sales and marketing where this company was represented. The Malaysian entity of this company then invited me and says, Casey, can you advise us, all right, how can we begin, how do we get our engineers, how do we get our managers to easily embrace the company's culture of fearless, inclusion, quality, blah, 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 blah. All right, and so I was able, to then use my, understanding and create what I call a snake and ladder. And I told them, that in this case, this Penang people who was based, in Penang, that power distance will create a problem for the local Malaysian engineers to embrace the philosophy of fearless. Why? Because we respect power, we respect hierarchy, we expect to be told what to do. Okay? Power distance of 100 means that. But here you are, the CEO sitting, in the United States. I want you to be fearless. I want you to question status quo. I want you to challenge our process. I want you to be creative. So it's not easy for the Malaysians, to attribute this quality called fearless. Now, once they recognize, the difference, you can begin to address, the people. Otherwise, the American managers, the Malaysians, are too conservative. I want them to be fearless. I want them to challenge the process, and they don't speak up. Okay? But now that they understand, we can begin to build the bridge. So basically, on my work, I try to understand where it will be easy, and so I use what I call snake and ladder. Say for example, the individualism, so our Malaysians are very collectivist. The harmony of the group is important. And they have this quality called act as one company. Okay, this huge technical company has different business. And sometimes this business conflict with each other. So that's why the CEO wants them to not behave as different strategic business units, but as one company. And because the Malaysians have a collectivist culture by nature, for them to assimilate the idea of act as one company will be a lot simpler. Say, for example, if they were trying to push this culture within the United States themselves. So a very good way, is for us to, reconcile and look, at where it is easy and where it's not difficult, and then begin to structure processes, dialogues, coaching, that ease those areas. So very interesting consulting work that I'm able to assist this company with. Right, so now, how do we begin to do the integration?
I was in Brussels. I was sitting on La Grande Place, which is a beautiful square in the center of town. Suddenly a man came and sat next to me and started talking to me. So I turned to him and I answered. Then I turned back and I asked myself, why is he talking to me? Suddenly I realized, Julian, you're becoming Norwegian. So I turned to the man and I said, sorry, I live in a country where people don't speak to each other. The thing is in Norway is not that people don't speak to each other, is that socialization takes part in a much more framed and organized manner. I was not expecting this man as a stranger to come and talk to me. However, this is surprising because I come from the French-speaking part of Canada where that type of behavior is totally normal. However, my mental programming has changed. My brain has been rewired because during the last 5 years, I've lived in a tiny little country in the north of Europe, which is called Norway. When you move to a different country, there's 3 ways that you can relate to the culture. You can confront, complain, or conform. When you confront, you believe that your behaviors are the right behaviors. When you complain, what it happens is that you will isolate yourself into social bubbles of foreigners living in segregation with the society. When you adapt your way to behave, when you conform to the whole society, then you can truly benefit from diversity. But that implies that you are observing, learning, understanding the behaviors of others, and adapting your own so that it fits with the behaviors of the society you're in. I was in the northeast of Spain, in a beautiful region of Catalonia. And I was there with a very good friend of mine. He is 2 meters tall, blonde hair, and blue eyes. And we were visiting the beautiful region where they're making the cava, the Spanish sparkling wine. And after the guided tour, we asked some more questions to the very charming guide that was there. And she was explaining us with passion about what she was doing. And then suddenly she stopped. She took a step aside. She took my friend. And she shook him. And then she looked at me and said, "Why is he not interested into what I'm saying?" Because she was not getting the emotional feedback she was used to. She was seeing his emotional feedback through her own cultural glasses. Meaning that she was interpreting the fact that he had a neutral face on what it would mean if someone from her culture would have that face. And that would mean that the person was not interested or didn't want to be there. And we all see the world through cultural glasses. The lens through which your brain sees the world shapes your reality. If you can change the lens, not only can you change the way your brain perceives behaviors, but you can change the way people relate to cultural differences. Embedded within that statement is the key to benefiting from diversity. You know that most people around the world are raised with the idea that they will need to contribute to a group, that they will be part of a group and interdependent on their members. And it affects the way people behave. Other parts of the world, especially the Western world, we raise our children to be independent and to be self-sufficient. And we create a certain independence in society. And it changes behaviors. You see the difference? This basic principle tells a lot about how you're going to expect a friendship to look like. In certain societies where the group prevails, the friendship will be much stronger in the terms that people will live in symbiosis with each other and dependent on each other, and they will be expected to be invited to every single event that a very good friend will do. However, in other cultures, friendship will be much more distant. I've asked a Scandinavian man one day what was a good friend. You know what he answered? It is someone I can sit in silence in a room and feel comfortable. If you tell this to a South American, they won't understand what is the principle. And this is about friendship and love and contact with people is one of 6 basic human needs. And if you're not able to see how this friendship and love is communicated to you because you're blind by your cultural glasses, you will spend years believing you have no friends. You will spend years believing that people are rejecting you. It is about changing these cultural glasses. This is when you know that the Norwegian bus stop is full and that you need to stand. What happens if you sit in the middle? It could very well be that one of the 2 persons stands up, take a step aside, start playing on his phone. Now, what if you look different? What if you're wearing religious symbol? How easy it is to believe that the person has moved away because you're of a different skin color or of a different religion. A typical cultural misunderstanding at the very basic of human interactions. You've came into the personal space of someone who has a much bigger personal space. And most cultures in the world, there's place for 4 people on that bench. And not understanding these very subtle physical differences with people will actually lead to a lot of miscommunication. If you want to observe it yourself, go to any international conference and try to observe a South American that tries to communicate with a North European. What will happen there is that the South American will be very eager and will stand at a distance that's comfortable for him. The North European will be also very eager but stand a little bit further away because he's not comfortable that the South American be so close. And if you observe it over time, you will see that there's a little dance that starts. And people go around the room. None of them realizing that they are feeling uncomfortable, or they both feel uncomfortable, but they don't realize why. And it's just a simple thing of culture and being able to feel that distance between people, which is different in every culture. The key here is to benefit from diversity. Everyone sees the world through cultural glasses. It's not about what you see, it's about what you perceive. It's not about what you see, it's about what you perceive. And it is by taking small steps that we will one day help the world to truly benefit from diversity. Thank you.
Okay, so I hope you found this, video clip very meaningful to bring it, into the challenge. All right. And so I try to put it into a picture. Most of the time, when you leave it to our natural instinct, as described, when we contact a new culture, when we go into a new country, when we go into a new company, all right, our first contact is that we see the differences and then we either complain about the differences or we confront it, okay? We push against it. Not, the best way to get the value that we want from our business relationship that way. So somewhere along the way, we got to bring it to a level of consciousness and say, okay, instead of contact, confront, complain, I want to be able to manage the process, facilitate the process, coach the process, such that the people involved, the leaders, yourself, your teams, can then be able to understand, to confirm, to conform, and then to contribute. All right? But you cannot go to contribute without, first of all, understanding the context, okay? And then, to see where we believe that we need to be able to put ourselves in their shoes and accept their norms, conform. And then, from there we begin to get to synergize. And most of the people here in this room are very rich in experience, in terms of teaching EQ, emotional intelligence. The same principles of, teaching leaders and managers, to have high emotional intelligence can be applied to high CQ. So seek first to understand, put yourself in the other shoes, the platinum rule, I will do what the other person want me to do unto them. Not what I want them to do unto me, the platinum rule. And then after that, the ability to create alternatives, synergy, get value out. So let's put it to an interesting conversation. As I said, I really want to tap into the rich experiences here, but let's use a case here. An Egyptian company is trying to set up a joint venture with a Malaysian entity. And I presented here in front of you the screen of the Hofstede characteristics of the Egypt and the Malaysian cultures. And you can very clearly see where there is a lot of similarity, and where there is, potential points for friction. Now, in the interest of time, I just want to pick one, uncertainty avoidance. So I'm going to open up the microphones now. Don't use the chat room. I prefer to hear us talking to each other, exchanging with each other, and say, so what do you expect, when this Egyptian company leaders work with the Malaysian company leaders on the uncertainty avoidance dimension? So I'm going to open up and say maybe we have 7 to 8 minutes discussion, and then we're going to have another 7 to 8 minutes discussion. And then how do we mitigate? How do we push the confirm, conform, contribute process. Okay, so let's first of all talk about potential contact, confront, complaint issues. With that, let's open up the microphone and let's hear your views. I'm sure we have a lot of interesting perspectives. Anybody?
Hello?
Yes?
Yes, I'm Pramod from Nepal.
Yes, Pramod.
I just wanted to highlight on this, on the flashpoint on contact, confront, and complain. I don't know how this will be related to your case study of Egypt and Malaysia, but then at a macro level, I was talking with an American friend of mine, same age, nearing 70, and then younger a little bit. Then I asked him, how often do you connect, or how often do you ring your parents? And he said, I get in touch with them maybe twice a year. And I asked when, and he said during Christmas and during their birthday. And say, do you have any connection with them? For me, it is a contact. You're just ringing him and asking, how are you? Merry Christmas. But then, are you connected with them? And this American guy was surprised. He said, what do you mean by connected? You see, for me, it's okay. I call him and say, how are you, Dad? And that's enough. But I said, this is contact. This is not connect. So I tried to explain him what is the meaning of connection. And that might relate to your contribute point, you see. So at the end of the day, it is not enough just to contact. At the end of the day, the main point is how do you connect. Like say, I can connect with Jan, with your framework, okay? So that is a connection. Now that could be there when you meet them, or that could be when you're talking. So I explained to him about the difference between connect and connect. So that is where, and I think in this world of uncertainty, where we face a lot of moral and cultural dilemma, the area is connection, basically. Contact may not be enough. That's what I wanted to highlight. Thank you very much.
For that. But again, there are different interpretations in different culture of when a parent and child get together, regardless of the frequency. But okay, in the event that they get together, okay, what is the significance and what value do they want to draw from that encounter? All right. So again, more of the Asian culture will have a certain requirement from it. And in the US, will be a certain requirement, both in the context as well as the content, right? What is exchanged, what is at play, and so on and so forth. So thank you for that, Professor Pramod. Anybody else?
Casey, can you see me, hear me? It's Maria from Australia. How are you?
Hi, Maria.
Hi. So I find this particular session really highly relevant, especially in the space of doing things online and remote, because even within that context too, and you're working together in, when you mentioned earlier about context, and certainly with the professor's example, there are context around personal relationships, but where I'm seeing this cultural agility in terms of this particular case study is around the way they operate, the way they work, and my understanding is when you have such a big difference, significant difference between the two venture partners around uncertainty avoidance. When you talk about standard operating procedures, where if for the Malaysian side, they're not as prescribed around how operations should run. It will run as it makes sense. So that will definitely be a flashpoint. So I guess on all levels of both the personal style, which can be impacted by the cultural environment and ecosystem, the ethnic norms, norming, but also both venture partners, whether it's a long-term venture partner or not, even if it's a short-term venture partner for a specific purpose, there needs to be an understanding and it needs to be documented around even what the culture is going to be for the venture itself. Because both companies and entities will have their own corporate values, and a lot of it, depending on where they operate in the region, will be very much coloured by the ecosystem of the cultural, norming in that space. So I think as soon as you see significant numbers of, deviation between the two venture partners, then that's something that is where they're going to be the contact, confront, and complain points, and how they then mitigate it. So you create that, the confirmation, the acknowledgement, and creating that conciliation. Because I think before you can start to do whatever it is that you plan to do together, I think the rules of engagement needs to be outlined. Because I think many of them won't be aware of it until a problem actually arises. So that would be my take on this particular.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Maria. As you saw in the video, is that when we finally see the social discomfort and the social so-called rejection of each other at play, we then attribute it for perhaps the wrong reasons. Okay? And by having a framework, we're able to see at least that there is a research base for us to peel the onion, explore the cause and effect, so that we are able to come up with more valid reasons for that discomfort, for that friction, and then you can apply the coaching moments. So definitely, thank you for that, Maria. Anybody else? If not, then let's move on, all right, to the second set of questions. Okay, so what are some of your experiences, in terms of helping to bridge the misperception, misunderstanding, the potential flashpoints, and try to move towards confirm, conform, and then contribute to performance? What are some of your experiences?
This is Chang Yoon from South Korea.
Yes?
When I checked the result of the this kind of survey, Korea actually mixed with individualism and collectivism nowadays. So there is some problem within the organization. For example, younger people sometimes put more emphasis on their individual life rather than organizational performance sometimes.
Yes.
So this kind of new behavioral patterns sometimes give some damages to organizations. So the CEO of private sector businesses and even in the public sector don't sometimes give some, how can I say that, try to persuade them you should be devoted to the organizational performance rather than individual pursuit. So actually there will be some change in the result of this kind of survey, I think.
Absolutely, Director Yoon, and you find, that obviously I do not know how constantly in the database by Hofstede, all right, and although it has got that few thousand characterization inside there, you and I know that you and I have to also be careful, because let's take a look, at Vietnam, they seem to have one Vietnamese culture. That's not true. There is, the North Vietnamese culture, and then there's the South Vietnamese culture. And then, when I was telling you about the coaching exercise that I had, is that this Vietnamese HR executive, female, from North Vietnam, and for those of you who understand North Vietnamese ladies, they are rather alpha, in their behaviors. And so you're going to be careful. You have to also be careful. Yes, are some of these cultural characteristics, more prominent, more dominant, with the older people, as regards, to the younger people, but All right, but at least, okay, you are aware of that, and you do not want to over-characterize nor under-characterize, but you are now beginning to say is, what are the extremes at play here? Okay? And is those extremes causing you, all right, to affect your integration of your business process? Okay, so thank you for that comment, Director. Anybody else? How will this affect your negotiations? Okay, how will, okay, for example, okay, an Egyptian, okay, negotiating with a Malaysian, how will it affect your contract negotiations?
Can I make a comment, Casey?
Please go ahead.
Yes, so memorandum of understanding, whatever the standard level agreements are going to be between the two parties, because when you have, a low score in the uncertainty avoidance, you might do a lot of verbal agreements as opposed to a high score. You will want all of the details right down to the subsections, subchapters, and contingency planning, all documented, written down, but also taken through at least consultants, advisors, and a couple of, the general counsel teams. And sometimes when you have that approach and if it's wildly different, taking it through such official channels with general counsels and lawyers and so forth can indicate a sense of lack of trust, when in fact it isn't. It's actually just, clarifying any ambiguity or areas of ambiguity. So if that is a cultural flashpoint right there, then that needs to be addressed right from the get-go.
You are absolutely spot on, all right? Okay, in terms of those people, okay, the Egyptians would prefer to have a lot of formal contracts, clauses, sub-clauses, all right, escape clauses, okay, escalation clauses, okay, legal recourse clauses, okay, and the Malaysians would generally be says, okay, let's keep the contract simple, and okay, when the moment comes, we will deal with it. Okay, and we're not saying which side, okay, is right, which one better builds trust, and which one does not build trust, but it's just that, okay, your needs are different. Okay, all right, I have one more comment from somebody, and then I need to move on to talk with my friend. I'm very good.
Director Casey, I'm sorry to give more opinion. Is it okay?
No, go ahead, please. All opinions are always welcome.
But I don't specialize in this kind of cultural literacy, but just attending this session, I think there are more critical factors which will give some impact to cultural literacy. For example, when I have some many different kinds of interactions with government officials from around the world, actually, advanced countries, many countries, then the key point is that the educational level or some religion and governance, and then the traditional manners are all critical factors. Especially governance is most important, I think, and followed by religion and educational level. So they are key factors which will can give some influence to the cultural literacy.
Yes, okay. Point taken. But okay, if you take a look, okay, at spinning off from the work, okay, of Hofstede, there's been a lot of research. For example, what is the relationship between power distance, okay, to corruption? What is the effect of masculinity and femininity, okay, with social stresses, suicides, all right, psychological dilemmas, dysfunction, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I think you are right. Okay, we just cannot take it as this face value, but at least for most of us, this is our entry point. We have got something to work with, and then we begin to peel the onion on that, as opposed to, all right, in the absence of any meaningful framework, we begin, okay, to throw again our own perceptions and all that. Okay, so fair with that. So thank you for your sharing, good insights, but at least you have some good framework to start you into your future journeys. With that now, let's take a 5-minute break. And when we come back, I would like for us, okay, to have a conversation with Puan Latifah, and our introducer, and then we can have a very fun, interesting conversation with Puan Latifah. Okay, so 5-minute break. Latifah Daud, who is today the Executive Director, all right, the head of HR for Strategic Human Capital Management for one of our biggest investment funds in Malaysia called Khazanah Nasional Berhad. I think it has nearly 40 billion, 30 plus billion, close to 40 billion US dollars of assets and investment that it is managing. And you can already see that, okay, the kind of people they have in that organization are highly intellectual, highly well-informed people. And so it's not easy to be able to manage human capital in a knowledge organization like that. Puan Latifah and I go back a long time. When I took over my role, okay, in the Motorola Semiconductor, Puan Latifah was running the manufacturing facility that we have in KL. And then obviously from there, she has gone from strength to strength. And after she left Freescale Semiconductor, she went to Shanghai. Not only she, but she relocated to Shanghai with the whole family. And she spent, okay, nearly 8 years in Shanghai with a company called Honeywell, another big company, head of. And then upon her Malaysia, and she picked up, okay, this, hugely prominent role where she has been there for the last, 5 years, Latifah? Is it 5 years already?
6 years this month.
Okay.
I'm 5, almost 6 years this month, yeah.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, so that's a thing. Now, I want to be a little bit informal, okay, with Latifah. Okay, so I'm going to ask her some questions. But basically, we want to tap into your experience, Latifah, in terms of your personal journey in the becoming a culturally agile person. All right, so your own personal journey, and as I said, okay, you also brought your family with you, so obviously your family also had got to go through the cultural adaptation process. And last but not least, I'd like to be able to get some advice from you on how you identify and develop global talents in Khazanah. So the first question for you, Latifah, now, I know that your culture agility starts even from the days when you were a student, okay, both, okay, in your schooling days and then your university days. So maybe you want to start from there. How do you see your journey, your cultural agility, enjoying cultural exposure from those early days?
Hi, thank you, Casey. Thank you for this opportunity to share with a very eminent and distinguished audience. I really appreciate the opportunity, and for everyone, if you all would know that Casey was my CFO, was my boss in Motorola Freescale at one time. So I learned some of this from Casey, but of course they were a bit more personal. So Casey, I will start sharing my journey. So when you talk about culture and learning, it's not just about geography. Sometimes background and the type of homes that you come from will also shape you when you go to different. So I think that was my first learning about culture adaptation, right? Because I came from a relatively poor family in the village. When I went to school, and I went to my first move was to a boarding school where we were all mixed with people of different family background and different economic backgrounds, and I think that was my first learning. So you learn to, you know, understand what you have, what you don't, and then you adapt yourself to that. So I remember my first hurdle was language, because I came from a rural school, very, very rural part of Malaysia. When I went to this school, my secondary school, where English was prominent and we were pushed to learn English, and I had to learn very fast. And that was my first hurdle of adapting culture, I think. And I learned through that journey. And then when I went to school in the US at the age of 19, and that was, I think, a cultural, another, that's probably the most shocking thing for me. For, you know, Malaysia is quite conservative, we have different values, we have different things. And then I went to the US, and you're put there in this, you know, wow, this freedom of US school atmosphere, and that was, I think, a learning and a cultural learning at the same time. So that kind of shaped and set and teach me how to adapt, right? And then I came back and I worked with, my first job was with an IBM sales company, and in Penang. That was my first job. And I kind of liked the job, I liked the sales and all that, but I was a scholar, so I had to go back to a government agency because of my scholarship bond. So I went to work with the government for a while, with the agency of the government. After 2 years, I realized that I couldn't cope. I couldn't, because I think I was becoming a bit more culturally, how should I say, westernized, and like the freedom of the free to speak, and you know, so I was self-aware that I wasn't moving the way I want to, and I was finding it a bit difficult. And then I changed job and I went to Singapore to work with a consulting firm. And in Singapore, I learned, I really thrived, I enjoyed it, because of, I think, part of how you can progress is how comfortable you feel in the work environment and the people around you. So, you know, so that's I think was my early years. Then of course I moved to Motorola, where then in Motorola I was 13 years in Motorola, and in Motorola I think I was a lot older. I was in management towards the end of it. And then Motorola as a company, I think, gave a lot of, I would say Motorola was probably one of the early adopters of, how should I say, awareness about diversity, about inclusion, about, you know, pushing for ensuring that respect for individuals and things like that. Even in that role, I remember there were times when I struggled. Casey, if you remember, in the late 90s, when there were a lot of movement about being accepting differences, about sexuality, about human rights, and things like that. Right. And I was at one time working for a lady and reporting to her and supporting diversity in Asia and the inclusion, I would say. Imagine it was really hard because the different countries in Asia have different understanding and different values, right, and hugely different rulers, right? So it was really hard, and I remember having this lady, and I had really a cultural shock, and that was my first difficult moment to how should I say, to my difficult moment to accept our differences and to adjust myself on what would be expected of me in that role, and when it's conflicting with the values and my beliefs. And yes, that was hard. I remember also there was one funny incident. when you know how it is in the US, you celebrate like, okay, yeah, your HR director having a tea or having a open dialogue with all the different communities that are sexually different oriented, and how it becomes like in a newsletter that was celebrated. And imagine that being put on the front page in your company newsletter for Malaysia. Right? So it becomes quite shocking, right? So then I remember...
And you have to mitigate it, right?
Yeah, because it's just like, it's a different value system. Yeah. Even though individually I may accept it, I mean, okay, I know that the society or the community they were in wasn't ready for that, right? So I think those were some of the difficult moments that we've had. When, remember at one time, there was a big thing that, in the factories, you must have restrooms that are unisex. You must have restrooms that are for gents and for ladies, and then there's one that's going to be for the others, right? So there was a strong debate about how are we going to manage that in a conservative country of Malaysia, of Vietnam, of India, and of China. So those were some very interesting moments that I had to go through. And then from there, I grew and I became older, and I got family, and then I went to China. So going to China, just to share a little bit about going to China.
Yeah, before that, Latifah, if I can just stop you, okay? Could you explain a little bit more, okay? As a female executive, did you find the cultural adaptation journey? Did you feel that it's a little bit more challenging, a little bit more difficult compared to if you were a male?
Casey, I'm not sure that my journey was any different than a male counterpart. Maybe that's because I worked for the most part at that time in an American company who already clearly articulate what's expected, number one. Number two is also because probably how I was wired. From my background in Malaysia, we are a bit more fortunate than many. Our education system didn't differentiate male, female. Our political system didn't, although the glass ceilings are thicker here, right? But at the beginning, we all vote, we all went to school, so there was no discrimination in that sense, number one. Number two, I have, I would credit this to my grandfather, God bless him. My grandfather used to be like a real proponent of female must go out there and educate. So I get a lot of encouragement from him. So as a person, I never felt intimidated or any less if I'm in a male or female environment. But I was fully aware that as a female in Malaysia, I'm expected to behave and to be in a certain way. Sometimes I would be unhappy about it, but I understand and I would adjust and play along, right?
Thanks, Latifah. Okay, sorry for distracting you. So tell us about your China journey.
So my China journey, as you will recall, Casey, I was always eager to want to move out, but towards the end of Motorola, and when Motorola was going down a little bit, they couldn't afford to send many of us overseas until, especially I remember my boss at one time when I used to bug him that I want to go out, told me that, Latifah, I really want you, I really want you to, I really think you should go, but you have so many children. I have 4 children at that time. He said it will cost a lot to send, an employee with 4 kids who are all school going. So I then accepted that, and towards the end when the opportunity came for me to leave, I actually went out, and 2 years before planning to move to China, I actually sent 2 of my younger kids to Chinese lessons every day for 2 years. So it kind of, I think, to prepare myself, because I chose to want to go to China at that time. So, and then only I started looking for a job, and Honeywell came along. So I remember, my boss in Honeywell, after he has already signed me up, I signed, accepted everything, he called me back and he got cold feet. And he called me and said, Latifa, I have to talk to you again. I said, why? He said, are you sure you can? Are you sure your family will? And he said, I said, yeah, why? I said, I have worked in China. I have worked in Hong Kong, and I know I can do it. You know, I have been going there since 1996, and this was 2007 when I went to China. And he said, no, my biggest concern is you don't know this company. He said, you know, Honeywell is a big company, but it behaves sometimes like a Chinaman company in some of the things that they do. So I said, what is it that you're very scared about? What are you concerned about? He said, no, you know, you'll be going to dinner, you're going to things, and people are expected, you're expected to be there, and they'll be serving pork and frogs and other, you know, exotic food. How will you behave? So I said, okay. I said, I definitely will not eat them, but I think I'll be okay. So that was his biggest concern. But my biggest concern going there was that I did not know a single Chinese word. I really didn't speak Mandarin at all. So I was going to rely on my 4-year-old and then 9-year-old who had 2 years of, you know, like 1 hour a day of Mandarin to go there, and that was my biggest concern. So anyway, we made it, and I promised Yap at the time. I said, Yap, I will go there 2 years. He said, yeah. He said, even if you survive 2 years, I'm fine, because anyone else before you only survived 6 months. So anyway. So we went, and for quite a while, we were relying on these 2 kids who were like, you know, helping us along. Their language was like barely passable, but so I think when put in that situation, it was more of personal survival. But I say companies like Honeywell, of course, have got a lot of resources and support to help you in that adapting to the culture. But they can only give so much. The rest is you individually that you have to learn and maneuver yourself. And I had a very good support from my team, from my bosses, and you know it came with, you know, there were lots of pain, a lot of also difficult moments. But I think.
Can you illustrate one of the difficult moments, Latifa?
One of the difficult moments, for example, is like, because when I went there, I was probably one of the most senior hire that came from outside China directly to a position that people expected that it could have been a Chinese local hire at the time.
Right.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of a concern, and then the Honeywell was just building up and really ramping up, and the business leaders then were eager to have a local, and the position that I was in is on staffing, attracting and recruiting talents, and most of the hires I made would be senior hires. So therefore, there were quite a number of local new leaders, business leaders, then were expecting, you know, a Chinese person that's going to be there, so that it's easier for them, because I don't speak the language, so that becomes the biggest pain and their biggest frustration.
Right. Okay, because you have this cultural thing about localization and all that, right?
Yeah. So to a point that, you know, one of the things that I, you know, because of course China is a very, you know, competitive, right? They can be very direct, but sometimes they can also be very like evading, right? You can't really tell which one is real, which one is what they portray. I mean, like anybody, right? So it's like, anyway. So one of the difficult moments was like, when I went there and I called for meetings, people just, keep avoiding to accept because so that, it's like giving you a cold shoulder of sort of.
Passive aggressive.
Yeah, passive aggressive, correct. So I have had to really, identify and work with my boss and tell him, like, look, this is the problems I'm having, and these are the people that list. And I went to him and said, I'm having this problem. And he said, yeah, I'm not surprised. So I said, what are you going to do about it? I said, well, I'm just going to go one by one. So I actually went one by one and explained to people and went and kind of, that's more of the my personality that, I would rather go and tell you, but me, Casey. So I will go and say, look, I'm here to do a job. I have to do this job. You may not like me doing it, but for now, I'm the one that's going to help you do it. So.
Okay. All right. So we're running against the clock here. So Latifa, some gems of advice on your current role. Any advice, for our community, how you identify and develop global talents?
Yeah. One of the things, Casey, when you asked just now about global talent, when you say global talent, naturally we will say that global talent means that somebody that you hire from globally to come to us, right? But for us, we also have to think about global talent as it could be somebody local that is so globally valuable that it can be marketable anywhere. Right. I think that's going to be the first thing that we need to recognize, right?
Sure.
So in my role, then I will always have to ask that if I'm going to hire this locally, do I then deny the company of a really good global talent? You know what I mean? So in my role, of course, there are certain roles that is going to be specific that will need local know-how and local knowledge. That you will need to hire somebody who are local. But typically, when we look at a job, we want to make sure that we have a talent that's going to be at par with, because they are going to negotiate, they are going to influence, our investing companies that are going to be outside the country. So then the challenge I have is to make sure that our expectations is set right. And then in this role, I also support our regional offices outside of Malaysia. We have offices in San Francisco. We used to have one in London, which already closed. We have it in Turkey, and we have a big office in Shanghai and also in Mumbai. So then cultural sensitivities to those countries are equally important, and ensuring that our own people here are aware of how to deal with their customers that are outside Malaysia, as well as their counterparts in those parts of the world.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Latifa. Very rich sharing. It's now a little bit after 6. So I appreciate your sharing. Let's just take 5 minutes. Whether you have any questions for Puan Latifa or from me, there's a bit of a chat activity between me and the audience, in the chat room. But otherwise, open up the microphone. Any questions in particular for Puan Latifa? It doesn't have to be a question. It could be a reinforcement. It could be, a confirmation and affirmation, of her journey.
Director Keshian, this is Chang Yun again.
Yes.
I involved too much. Sorry to all participants. I think the existing 6, just executive director, our explanation may be focused on the existing 6 key points, that highlight the cultural literacy. But I think, as we all know, nowadays, due to the COVID-19, the situation or environment, business environment, everything is changing. So, under the changing environment, I think the concept of cultural literacy may be changed, reformed, I think. Because I already know many participants, because I engaged in the last conference. Then on the platform, different style of cultural literacy, or some new concept, or how to technology can support the strengthening of cultural literacy online.
Yes.
So new concept maybe should be introduced, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, with a lot of travel restrictions, with borders being closed down, and our traditional way of engaging people in a more culturally direct manner. All right, but those opportunities are gone. It's a double-edged sword. Digital age as well as the COVID-19 situation is a double-edged sword. In terms of our ability to extract full meaning from our cross-cultural interaction. So with that, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Latifa, thank you for your presence. Truly appreciate it. And I really want to just hopefully you find that my presentations are usually a little bit too rich, and but hopefully you are able to see that affirmation of the overarching principles. Some of your ongoing continuous challenge are surfaced and brought into meaningful discussion today. So with that, thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Latifa. I was like hanging on to your every word, and vivid images came to me as you related your story, and I see your personal style. And I also appreciate that you didn't see much of a difference between gender due to your kind grandfather, so that you did not perceive any gender biases or any differences from the gender. And I think you are a very good role model for women leaders throughout Asia.
Thank you, Professor Pramana. Really appreciate the feedback.
Casey, Lorena would like to share some points. She is incidentally from Guatemala and living in Europe currently.
Yes, go ahead, Lorena.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Yes, for me it was very interesting moving from Guatemala to Europe, but first I was in India. So as you can imagine, living in India, but also working with the Tibetan people. So for me, it was a really big, like earthquake in my mind, because I didn't know how to behave for the Indians. For example, women, we don't have to talk to them because they think that we're approaching. The Tibetans, and at that moment, I felt comfortable because they are more like the Latin American people. They like to talk, they are laughing, it's nice. And then I went to Spain because they wanted me to work at the Tibetan Cultural Center there. Mm-hmm. But then was another shock because, of course, I was very comfortable with them and I used to speak English with them, but then going to Catalonia, that they speak another language, and then they don't like that we speak English. So, but I didn't spoke Catalan. So, okay, so then I tried to speak with them in Spanish, and they didn't like it. And then they don't like it. Why a woman, in this case, they didn't like it. A woman from Latin America is working as a professional assistant in our association. Oh, so difficult. And also the Spanish people, this is a cultural difference that they like to tell you things like, I don't like you. But it's like, it's a statement for you to know, but that doesn't mean that they cannot work with you. So they don't have to learn, because in Latin America, if they come to you and say, I don't like you, for you it's an offense and it's a drama.
Yes.
But for the European people, they can be really direct, and then there's a cultural difference. You have to accept.
Yes.
So for me, okay, I accept and I appreciate, because then at least you know where you're standing. Yeah. You like him or not, but you can work. It's fine. You cannot be friends, but you can work together. It's okay.
And the challenge is, sometimes, this dilemma get into a personal level now, okay? When they suggest to you and me that we are not culturally appropriate, it feels a little bit personal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, given your background, my expectation is that culturally you should have already been attuned, and yet you don't.
Yeah, and here now in Holland,
Things like that. So yes, that's using my model, like about, the fact is your personal values, the corporate values, and the country values.
Yeah, and here in Holland also is very different because Spain at least is also a little bit more close to Latin America, but here in Holland, as a north, people are more distant. Even though also I had the experience of living in Germany, because the people in Germany, they are completely different. Of course, I respect all of them, but they don't even want to look at your eyes, and they don't like to talk. But it's normal for them. But for me, it was like, oh, what is this? It's a nightmare. What is happening? Yeah, but very interesting.
Casey, I just wanted to.
Thank you.
Hi, Casey, if I may, I think one of the things that we didn't have a chance to talk about, but I am definitely now working within my organization to come to, to a landing is managing the different values within the culture. Like even if you look at Kazana or Malaysia, the new millennials, the new expectations of my generation and my children's generation are totally different. Totally, I don't see that we're gonna be able to even assimilate. It's like there is a clear, line in the sand that we are different. So that is going to be, I think, for many countries in Asia, something that we will need to come to terms and find a way on how to learn to live together and adapt. I would see, Malaysia, Indonesia, because of our religion, our value systems, and of course the young people's, they are a lot more egalitarian, they are a lot more open and wanting to be the norms and respect for individuality or personal space. Things like that, that's going to be really, really different. And I think the country culturally will have to adjust within the next few years.
Definitely. Thank you. Okay, at the end of the day, okay, while you and I are very, very interested about culture, transactions, and culture agility, but for us, all right, at least for me, all right, is about the ability to run the corporation, deliver a certain amount of performance.
That's right.
And then everything else is negotiable. Everything else, is agile.
Yep, definitely.
All right. So over to you, Rita. You want to wrap up?
I believe Dr. Atif would like to do the closing.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kessian, for your valuable and very rich workshop. And also thanks to Paul Latifa for your rich experience. Also, we benefit a lot from that. And also, please allow me also to thank all the audience who attend this workshop and interact very positively. And I hope that also all of you will join us to attend the next post-conference workshop, which will be done on the 28th of this month. And it will be addressed by Mr. Carl Laru. And it will be about transforming stress into success. So thank you very much, Kessian. And I hope that all of us will meet again next week.
Do we want to do a group photo, Dr. Atif?
Yeah, for sure. Please, everyone, open the camera.
So everybody, please turn on your camera.
Hi, Mr.
Hi, Dr. Amira. I'm seeing you.
Hello, doctor. How are you? I really enjoyed it so much. Thank you very much.
Thomas, if you could adjust your camera a little bit.
Dato?
Okay, very nice, Dato. Thank you. All right. Let's go.
Yep. Excellent. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Bye.
your evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Casey.
Bye. Have fun.
Thank you, Sofrida. Thank you, Poonam.
Bye, Casey.
Bye.